Black Sheep Agency to talk to us about building community connection in an uncertain digital climate. Before we introduce Katie, I just had a couple of announcements. Please make sure to check our website. We have a brand new website this year. So we have some wonderful blogs and other important information. We have a cross-promoted opportunity with Bank of America focusing on the role of nonprofits and philanthropy and fostering equity for all. That is coming up with our friends at the Bush School at Texas A&M March 30th. So register now. It's a great opportunity. Also, our virtual new member orientation March 31st from noon to 1 to get to know the chapter and get as a great way to get connected as a new member. And then it's no fool. It is not April Fool's, but we are having a virtual mixer on April Fool's, and it truly is happening. So don't think that it's an April Fool's joke, because it is. We will be having that virtual mixer. We're excited. Hopefully that you'll get a chance to attend it. And then Icon, they recently announced that AFP Icon is actually going to be virtual. So it gives you the opportunity that you don't have to necessarily travel to Minneapolis this year to attend. I hope that everyone's able to attend. Just a quick plug, I was recently given the honor of being a presenter at AFP Icon. So I'm representing our chapter there, and I hope that that y'all will come just for the camaraderie. And if you're interested in volunteering, please make a chance and to volunteer and get involved on a committee, an AFP. Wish you could fill out a form, and we would really appreciate opportunities to get you more engaged and involved with our chapter. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Amy Tanner to introduce our guest speaker. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Amy. My name is also Amy Tanner. I am the Chief Advancement Officer at Yellowstone Schools. I've been in Houston doing fundraising and philanthropy work for about 20 years, and it is my distinct honor to introduce Ms. Katie Laird, who is the Director of Fieldwork at the Black Sheep Agency, a social impact-focused organization based right here in Houston. Katie is a believer in people and collective impact and supports nonprofits and civic organizations with strategy and storytelling that activate people around things that matter. Ever the learner, Katie is pursuing a master's degree with a concentration in government and social justice and relishes every moment of preschool alphabet and high school algebra lessons with her kiddos. Katie, if you want to take it away and blow our minds with community connection in this uncertain digital age.
What a setup. Thank you, Amy's plural. If you would be so gracious, everybody, to allow me that very awkward moment where I will begin to share my screen. I am really excited to get to meet with you guys today. And whenever Amy Tanner and I talked a number of months ago about me coming and connecting with you guys, the idea, and hold please, here's where the awkward moment happens. The idea is that we really wanted to give a little bit of insight into what Black Sheep does every day, which is really to help activate humans around things that matter through really smart digital programs. And that is what we're going to do today. So today's session is really about us getting together as people, even though it's totally not the same thing as being in a room and drinking coffee and swapping woes and victories together. But it's gathering together, it's building connection, and a lot of that is really going to start with the fundamentals that your marketing team, whether that's you sit within the marketing team, or that's one of the hats you wear, or maybe it's a partner within your organization. These are things that you or they are actively thinking about. But how thrilling to revisit the 101, the basics, to help you really ensure that your organization is ready to pivot, ready to rock and roll, no matter what comes in this incredible year of challenge and opportunity that is 2021. So that's where we're going. So as the Amy's mentioned, I'm with the Black Sheep Agency. We're a cause-based creative design and strategy firm based here in Texas. We work all over the world. In short, we're a team of passionate, very nerdy humans who activate people around things that matter. I want to set some expectations for everyone today, mostly expectations of yourself. I think sometimes we enter into workshops or conferences or learning opportunities really expecting too much from ourselves, where we're going to glean, every single thing that somebody says, we're going to write it on our notepad, or we're going to have 27 takeaways and we're going to be executing like crazy over the next month. I want to just kind of pump the brakes a little bit, and I want you to make a commitment to yourself and to me that today, after our conversation, you will walk away with not 27, but one thing. You will walk away with at least one idea or one way that you want to challenge, assumptions within your organization when it comes to building those connections through smart marketing. One tool, one fun, creative, experimental idea. And I really would love to hear about it, whether it's in our Q&A time at the end, or if you'd like to share with me on social or via email. What was your one thing? What is the thing that you can't wait to think about or to jump into in a fresh new way? And I also want you to feel like you can just sit and soak it in and think deep thoughts as I'm speaking by not having to take lots of notes. So know that you'll be able to rewatch this presentation thanks to your great pals at AFP Houston. And if you'd like to get a copy of my slides, you can either direct message Black Sheep on Twitter or Instagram at Sheer Creativity, or email me. I would love to talk to you and continue conversations or answer additional questions. Whew. So one thing, keep an open mind, think deep thoughts, and let's get moving. So as I mentioned, I titled this presentation, Building Connection in an Uncertain Digital Climate, because that connection is something that we are so desperately craving right now as humans, as members of the communities that we belong to, and as professionals. So at this heart, this conversation is about leveraging marketing fundamentals, but a lot of those fundamentals really rely on us making connections, not just with the people that we're hoping to connect with from a fundraising perspective, but also making connections within your organization to make sure that you're really leveraging all of your marketing channels and leveraging all of the enthusiasm and brain power and fresh ideas that you possibly can. So everything today that we talk about should be centered around connection, those connective opportunities, and also experimentation, how you can enrich those and make them all the more exciting. We don't have a whole lot of time together, but we're going to cover these three general areas. We're going to take a quick look at some critical themes from 2019, 2020 to 2021. We're going to go through some Marketing 101 foundations, and I have some thoughts on how you might be thinking through some things in fresh new ways for a great new year ahead. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about virtual experiences. So clearly, we're living in a very online, virtual, work from, play from, donate from home world. So I have a few examples that I hope can start some conversation in our Q&A time. So let's hop into really the reality of what we're facing these days. This time of rawness, of realness, of humans who need support and humans who need connection. Looking back over the last year, we know so well that we sit inside a very complicated portrait for nonprofits, and a complicated portrait for any sort of organization. There's some cool news where we see smaller donations, rising year over year. We see healthy numbers of homes that are actively supporting nonprofits in response to COVID and for other social challenges that they're rising up to meet. But I know that there's some unsettling things on your mind, because they're on my mind also, where we see a loss of revenue coupled with an increase in need from organizations. So scary stuff, but hopefully things that really affirm how important your work is and how important having these sort of fundamental 101 conversations is within your organization to make sure that you're getting to it in a fresh new way, however the world demands. We have this high level perspective looking back at 2019, where we saw this really year of opinion, whether it was in the political sphere or elsewhere. Lots of news and information spreading, digital was booming, and people were really actively using their voices and moving away from just being mere, social media lurkers, people just watching and absorbing content, but people creating and talking and commenting. Some of that was a little stressful and divisive, and some of that was really thrilling and something I don't think is going to go away, which for a nonprofit organization has a lot of positive implications. Then we sat within this space of 2020, the time of adaption, of activism, of empathetic marketing. We saw an increase of social media usage boom, 3.5 billion users actively participating in social media. That is so many people, understatement of the year. People started really focusing on brands with purpose. They were looking for brands that were connecting to issues and to nonprofit organizations to know where they wanted to spend their time and attention. And then we move into 2021. We're already almost 4 months in. How trippy is that? And this is really this time of deepening connection and experimentation in the virtual sphere. So if 2020 taught us to adapt to the current climate of the social media uptick, 2021 should teach us how we can be even more interactive and engaged with donors and supporters in intimate virtual spaces. So let's pull things back to that fundamental space that I keep alluding to. I definitely recognize that your official annual marketing planning and budgets, are most likely, either complete or maybe something that you're approaching quarter by quarter so that you can, really pivot and be ready to shift as community needs arise. But in thinking of this sort of foundational marketing content, I also want you to be thinking of it maybe from a more granular perspective. If you don't have influence over the broader organizational strategy, there's so many things that you can implement on a campaign basis or on a much smaller basis where you have a little bit more control. So it's so difficult when presenting anything, when teaching a group of people anything, because everybody comes in with their own set of experiences, with their own collection of hats that they wear at the organization. But my hope is that you can apply some of these fundamentals really in any sort of space or with any sort of influence that you have. So thinking of those marketing fundamentals, these things that are tried and true that we can lean on again and again, I break things down thusly. The importance of listening and aligning, the importance of planning, but not, you'll note the big, my air quotes and the quotes on the screen, plan is something that should be flexible and ready to shift, at a moment's or a large social event's notice. I encourage folks to really be strategically rethinking their content strategy and their channel marketing. And lastly, but certainly not least, the idea of fearless experimentation, of taking this year of great change and continuing to lean into your proven ability already. We're over a year into this now, to try new things, to figure out how to make the greatest connections with your community. So first, we listen and we align. This is often difficult because if you're like me, a lot of times I'm ready to just roll my sleeves up and get to work. There is a need, I have ideas, I'm going to do them, let's go. But that approach can really leave some critical learnings and alignment on the table. So we begin with a pause. We give ourselves that space to hear and engage with the things that we uncover in the learning process. Now, when I think of strategic listening and strategic alignment, my first thought is to start within. So we talked about the idea of connection, not necessarily just be how you connect with donors and community members, but starting with the all-important internal connection, taking the time to have intentional space, protected time with your team, whether it's your board, your leadership, multiple work groups within your organization, or community partners that are really active in helping you strategize. Taking that time to do things like reevaluate and revisit your mission, vision, and values, understanding the why and knowing that everyone in your team can effectively communicate your why, but also sees the role that they play in your why, which helps reduce burnout and helps really develop a much stronger set of internal ambassadors that will help propel your mission forward. Then we move into really really critically evaluating how transparent your reporting is within your organization. But the how did we really do question. So being able to ask questions, even the basic stuff, what worked, what didn't, what surprised us, what inspired us. And if there's certain critical questions that you can't answer, taking those steps into figuring out what are tools that you need to invest in, or what are some internal alignments that need to happen to ensure that you have access to all the data, whether it's hard data or more sentiment-driven data, so that you can make those smart strategic decisions as fundraisers. Then we move into the idea of success. Now I know, by virtue of the organization that I'm speaking to, that you've got ideas, you have goals that you need to fundraise to, you have campaigns, you have things that you're working on. But what's interesting is that getting to those dollars, and I'm sure that you feel this very keenly already, doesn't always necessarily mean only honing in immediately on the fundraising aspect. So being able to take a step back as an organization and deciding what are the larger metrics that we impact on? How can you look beyond the need for dollars and know how to communicate that transformation that your organization provides its community, or ways to excite and inspire donors in fresh new ways to ensure that they keep donating or that their donations increase? And lastly is really thinking about the big pivot question. So you have some historical references by this point of how you've pivoted in 2020 as an organization. But now that you've had some learnings from a very difficult year, what are the next shifts? What are the next pivots that are happening? Just really critical conversations to get things in alignment to build a strong marketing strategy. But external listening is critical too. And perhaps this is embedded in your organization already, where you are very actively listening through surveys, through focus groups, perhaps through digital monitoring tools. But you, in your seat right now, and with the teams that you work with, I just want to ensure that you have access to some of those important points of feedback as well, and are able to ask very specific questions that help inform the work that you do. That could be the difference between investing heavily in a direct mail campaign versus maybe earmarking some experimental budget to try some sort of TikTok promotion or a new Facebook retargeting campaign. So making sure that it's not just your organization that's listening, but that you get to hear the stories and see the data and are empowered and empower others to act on what it is that you're hearing and learning. And then we begin to plan. So we've listened, we've aligned internally, and we move into building a digital marketing plan, or revisiting and refining the digital marketing plan as the year progresses. So I have a very strong feeling that your actual digital or regular marketing plan is a lot more nuanced than the steps you see here. But this is a great broad way to look out into what could be or what to be thinking about for the upcoming year. So we start, of course, with that greater organizational vision and your organization's shared goals front and center whenever you're planning online or offline efforts for 2021. I have been telling a lot of clients that of all years, this is not the year to hang on to, kind of those oldie but goodie tactics and channels, doing X just because you've always done it and it makes someone on the board feel good. This is a year of strategic intention where you're obsessing over the vision, you're obsessing over the mission, and making sure that all of your marketing activities ladder up to that, and accepting none that do not. And as you're in that goal and objective setting phase, this is also a great time to revisit your supporter funnel. And of course, within any organization, you most likely have at least one or two supporter funnels where you're able to, really understand how you're cultivating those relationships with your supporters and your donors. Everything, of course, always starting with that baseline organizational goal that leads into more directed strategies with their connected objectives and KPIs. So here is just a very rough look at perhaps what your funnel looks like. And as you're figuring out, how are people discovering you? What is that journey? What is that pathway to get them to the place where they're donating or they're becoming an active evangelist or ambassador for you? These are really critical spots where you can make sure not just that you're aware of what, those funnel, what your funnel looks like, but that everything that you do and that you have planned for the remainder of the year somehow connects into one of those funnel layers. And if it doesn't, it's definitely something that probably needs to be reevaluated and reconsidered and perhaps paused. So you see here, of course, we begin in the awareness stage. Supporters are just learning about your organization, being able to map out what those activities are and what your KPIs are, your key performance indicators are. Moving into interest and trust. So at this point, someone has learned about you, they're interested in your cause, but you want to really enhance that relationship and build the trust, because folks that don't trust you are not going to give you their email address. They're not going to show up for you in any real meaningful way. So you want to get them, kind of hooked and understanding what their role is, being able to see their place and the impact that you have on the community. Moving into involvement, perhaps they've participated in an initiative that you've put out there, but are still a little bit wishy-washy compared to some of your super supporters. So this is a space where you're wanting to engage them through a variety of experimental ways. Folks all have their own abilities and interests in how they're either financially or time-wise able to connect with a nonprofit. So this is one of those really exciting spaces where you can be very experimental, with impact storytelling or, with maybe some digital volunteerism that doesn't take a whole lot of time and effort, but is that thing that kind of gets them hooked and gets them feeling a part of something. And then we move into this broad investment phase, which an investment perhaps is a financial investment. Perhaps it's an investment in time because they're just not able to do so. Perhaps because of a pandemic-related job loss. You just never know. But really figuring out what are those specific activities that you can be doing that are connecting with each supporter exactly where they are in their funnel and in their understanding of you. And lastly, in our mind at Black Sheep, whenever we're thinking about the penultimate moment of a donor-supporter relationship, it's not that they've made that one-time donation or multiple donations. It's when they're really fitting into this role of evangelist and they're able to bring in new faces, new voices, new funders for you. And really just help you amplify all of your messaging and all of your critical community impact moments. So we're continuing to make that plan. We've listened and aligned, we've connected goals and objectives and mapped out every single activity that we do with our funnels, making sure that everything is strategic and has a purpose. Then it's time to really begin reevaluating the audiences that you're connecting to. And it's not to say that you haven't done a really phenomenal job of getting to know your target audience in the past. But the reality is right now, things have just changed so dramatically for folks, even the folks that you've known for years and years. So this is the ideal time to kind of reintroduce yourself and re-meet the folks that you really count within your community. So in the past, perhaps you've built out some sort of audience persona where you have an idea of, education level, occupation, salary, preferred channels of communication, what personal motivations are, like the why behind why they would want to connect you, and maybe even some, concerns and frustrations where the pain points that you need to address to get them to take that next step into really becoming an active participant in your community, an active supporter. But what's happened in the last year? you know, priorities have shifted. Issues and focuses that, you know, for decades for some folks were critical and unchanging have completely changed now. Other things like salary or the ability to financially support in this moment or financially support in the same way that they did may have changed. And as mentioned before, we see people have really adjusted their online behaviors. So it could be that email was the way to go before, but now perhaps people, because they spend way more time at home, are very open to snail mail, or they're really getting into live video streaming because that's what they've spent 25% of their time doing at home is Netflix and Facebook Live. So taking this time to revisit even tried and true audience personas will really help support all of your marketing efforts moving forward. And then we move into investing in smart channels. So we know that selecting the right tools can really save you time, save you money, and really broaden and broaden your impact exponentially. One activity, so I just have to say I'm very into anything I can do with Post-it notes and whiteboards, even at home. I'm very into Post-it notes. I have like 17 Post-it notepads in front of me. Something that we do quite frequently with nonprofits and civic organizations that we work with is this stop, start, shift exercise, where as a group, and this can be virtual, it can be in person, you know, socially distanced, you know, in a large conference room perhaps, or outdoor space, where we walk through each of the channels, or we walk through each of the core content types that we've engaged in the last 12 months. And we all have our own little Post-it notes where we put new ideas that we'd like to start, things that we know aren't working and we just need to pull the plug and stop, things that we think has potential but we'd like to modify and experiment with, and things that we think are worth continuing because, you know, hell's bells, in 2020 it worked really well. And of course, it's critical to know the KPIs, the things that you're evaluating when you're deciding what channels or what content buckets to start, stop, or shift. So you most likely have established KPIs. You know, if you're very email driven, knowing that, you know, you are very concerned about email subscriber rates and want to see click-throughs because that's what gets you to where you need to be. Maybe one of your greatest goals or things that are top of mind is around your reach. It's around building new audiences or going in deeper, building those connections with existing donors or past supporters. Perhaps a metric of success is you just want to learn and get better. So if something maybe didn't bring in a lot of money or attract a lot of attention or engagement, maybe it just taught you to do a new thing that you then want to continue in the future. So you remain very open to things that are just, you know, very learning friendly experiments. And lastly, are you being helpful? Are you bringing your community joy? You know, finding ways that you're able to really flesh out your brand personality and the value that you offer that maybe isn't always in those cut and dry, neat little boxes that just kind of increases goodwill is a completely valid and important metric for success. And then, of course, there's the all-important budget question. We won't go too far into that, except that I feel extremely strongly that organizations, no matter how enormous or tiny their marketing budget is, should always have a little experimental budget bucket at their disposal, just to have what I call play money. You know, something that even if it's $100 for an entire year, or it's $5,000 for an entire year, that allows to kind of answer those what if questions that come up in exciting brainstorming meetings, or help you test something that you've seen a competitive organization or someone you really just plain admire, you know, something you want to see if it'll stick so that you could make the case to go a little bit further next time around. And then, of course, as we talked about earlier, the importance of not just metrics, not just tracking data, tracking the right stuff and making it easily accessible to the folks that need to see it and be able to make decisions from it. Here is an enormous bullet list that I'm not expecting you to take notes on. Again, you can get this deck later, but just some samples of things that I've seen nonprofits and civic orgs, really place a lot of value on based on their vision, mission, and organizational goals. So some are the tried and true, they just want to drive more people to the website, or they're testing landing pages and they want to make sure people don't bounce the minute they get there. But some other things at the very bottom, looking at virtual event metrics. It's not just how many people RSVP'd, but it's about maybe you have specific goals around live attendee engagement, and then separate goals for asynchronous participation to, really be able to be inclusive to the folks that can or cannot make it at a particular point in time. But the point is that you're talking about metrics, you have things in place that can track them, but most critically, you know where to find them and you're able to actively look at them, discuss them, and make decisions off of them. And for our little marketing 101 section, I like to end on experimentation. So I've mentioned this a few times throughout, including that I'd love for you to have even the tiniest little experimental budget. And for me, experimentation really can give you the room to try something unique or try to do the things that you've done for quite a while. But applying this marketing mentality of test, learn, apply, repeat. Now, your tests shouldn't be, they don't have to be, and probably should not be something huge and dramatic. It's having these frequent, intentional, but very controlled experiments where, maybe you have an A/B test, like you're separating, an email group where one, you focus on story and there's an embedded video, and then the other half of your senders, it's just 2 sentences that drives them to a landing page. Just finding those different ways that you can see ongoing how you can just get a little bit better, to have that continuous improvement without breaking the bank or without completely stressing out your board of directors. And in my mind, experimentation too allows you the ability to manage the skeptics. So if folks are saying, we can't do that, we're a traditional organization and no one that donates would ever want to, go on Facebook to see something, or we'll watch a video on Instagram, you being able to have that little tiny experiment can really help maybe not completely change hearts and minds, but at least open the door for future conversation. Experimentation to me also can really help you leverage additional brains within your organization. If you're pushing to try something fresh, try something new, what an incredible opportunity for someone without as much tenure, or perhaps newer in their career, that comes from a completely different perspective and background, to offer up some things that on a very small level you can test out, you can experiment with. And lastly, of course, we're in this time of change, of shift, and just kind of, not that we're just going with the flow because we got stuff to get done, but, embracing the shifts and continuing that as like a part of your healthy, cultural mindset is really critical. Okay, I've talked so much. Let's talk more about virtual experiences. This is the first thing that I think of when I'm sitting in a virtual room of fundraisers. The richness of the opportunities within virtual experiences, and all the different ways that you can play and test and try out different tactics in a virtual, digital playground. Chances are very high that we'll never go back to just pure traditional events, or tried and true decades old fundraising models. And my hope is that while it is a little scary, even to me, like new things are scary, so much to figure out, I hope that it doesn't feel like completely a bad thing, and that it's something that excites you and really motivates you to get out of bed in the morning and just throw some spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks and what really helps you build that connection in a moment where we crave it more than ever. Just thinking of some core goals for virtual experiences. You want to be adding value, you want to be building connection and building relationships, and you really want to make sure that everything that you do has a specific call to action that's not always necessarily, donate here or join us now. That's where that supporter, that audience funnel comes in, where you may have an event that's, you know, with some tried and true supporters that you know is the perfect time to get folks to donate or contribute in a very specific new way. Or it may just be that your virtual experiences are, you know, what introduce you to a greater audience, or really get people to just fall in love with the humanity of your organization and the mission of what it is that you do for the community. But thinking of virtual experiences, you always want to make sure that you're focused and could easily speak to each of these goals here. A few examples come to mind thinking of virtual experiences. One is certainly something that I think we're all feeling pretty comfortable with right now. Virtual conferences, webinars, Zoom discussions, you know, thought leaders on camera, answering questions. And it's exciting because there are so many different platforms, whether it's something, you know, pretty simple and very affordable like Zoom, like what we're doing now, all the way up to, you know, if you can land that sweet corporate sponsorship, there are so many suites of very, very rich, you know, online event experiences available to you. And I do have a list if you're ever interested. I've started collecting from all of the different webinars and conferences that I attend, like a little treasure chest of all the different tools that are out there. So anyway, this is nothing new. We all know that it exists, and sometimes you just need money to make it special. However, a conference, an event that I attended last year, the Texas Conference for Women, and if anyone joins, it was pretty great. Melinda Gates was there, Issa Rae was there, who's on screen here. So the budget was clearly big, the technology was fancy, but that wasn't what made it magic. What made it magic was the coordinators for this event were so deeply thoughtful in ensuring that those hallway conversations that you'd normally enjoy and just live for at these events had a place, you know, within the event experience. You know, it was all about the conversation. So the conversation didn't necessarily have to live in the fancy tools. It was having a clear, even comment strategy. Whenever a speaker was presenting, there were clearly administrators that were trained and ready with prompts and responses and supportive text that they could immediately copy and paste in to help people out. That alone was such a tiny little shift, a tiny little detail that really helped this event blossom in such a special way. And likewise, that led out into their digital presence as well. I have never attended a conference, virtual or otherwise, that was so dedicated to amplifying attendees' voices, answering questions, asking questions, connecting people that had special interests to each other on Twitter and on Instagram. It just was so exciting to see how I, as an attendee, could influence a piece of this event. I could be brought in and help lead parts of the conversation just by having trained, ready to go, strategically minded conversation leaders. Another virtual event or virtual experience example here is actually one of Black Sheep's own. So what you're seeing here are just some social digital shares from a group of almost 4,000 interns that we connected with at an event that we called the Summary Internship. So last year, we realized that a lot of college students were having their summer internships canceled. So what we wanted to do was to help add value and to build our influence and awareness of our brand within this college community. And we developed a 2-day, essentially workshop, like a 2-day conference that was all about trying to cram in the gems that someone would get by interning with us into this 2-day virtual experience. So we had hands-on conversations about, you know, agency life and resume building and understanding corporate structures and what you want to be when you grow up and how to figure that out. All the way to these small breakout rooms where we could have these highly interactive Q&A sessions and little mini presentations. So again, this isn't hugely groundbreaking, except that we saw a specific need. We knew that we had the knowledge that would really empower this community who wasn't getting what they needed elsewhere. And from this, of course, we weren't fundraising, but what did end up happening organically is that this group of students ended up developing their own LinkedIn group where they all still remain connected, and we have the ability to share out different information here and there. So something that was a real world need, we poured ourselves into and have continued that connection outside of this virtual experience in another space where we can leverage it for, semesters or years to come. I'm very partial to this example of remote engagement and connection, which then leads into this greater awareness and fundraising opportunity. It's something that I've participated in a couple times with this nonprofit called the Black Lunch Table. They're essentially an organization that centers around oral history archiving and really focusing on intergenerational discussions around race and society. Fascinating group. Something that they do, pulling a typically offline experience into an online space during the pandemic, is what they call Wikipedia-thons. So basically, they provide this exceptionally thorough training of how to update and add to Wikipedia to ensure that people of color and female artists and musicians and contributors are better recognized. So it's a really robust training on something that more people should be good at, in my opinion anyway, which is to update and maintain Wikipedia. Kind of thrown into this highly collaborative, hands-on, camaraderie building event that's then followed up by just an incredible amount of rich conversation happening in other selected channels that make sure that connections that were made through their organization and that hands-on collaborative work that we all did together is continued in other forums, which drives engagement for future events, which drives traffic to their donation page. I know that for a fact. And again, just kind of builds out this story and this human face, just all predicated on basically a Google slide share and the ability to know how to do something that speaks to their vision and their mission. Another example of something that's even more cute and closer to home in Houston, Friends for Life is, I will say that they are a client, but we did not help them with this. They are an exceptional nonprofit that is, an animal rights group and an animal shelter. And they, like so many organizations, had to get super creative in how to make up for fundraising and how to make up for the fact that a lot of people view them as a physical place, an animal shelter, which means that they're inaccessible from a physical perspective. So what they're trying to do is to just find different ways that they can remind people that their work doesn't happen just in the shelter, or the community connection doesn't stop because you can't physically go to them. But they've just developed all these really rich digital experiences to replicate that playfulness and that fun that you would have by going in and connecting with them in person. So this is just a fun example of one of their many fundraisers that they conducted that was highly successful, an awkward pet portraits fundraiser where they recruited, I think, about 60 different artists around Houston. And for a mere $20, a $20 donation, you could submit a photo or photos of your pets, and an artist would draw your pet based on the photo you sent and little notes and descriptions of your animal. Now, as you can see on the slide, the skill level of the artist varied dramatically, but that was part of the fun. It's an awkward pet portrait. Like, it could be a 9-year-old, or it could be a legit, award-winning, designer that's had stuff in MFAH. So this is just one of those asynchronous, quirky, fun things that really helped them to connect to a much larger audience, raised money, got people on their mailing list, but most importantly, had people sharing from all over the country, maybe the world, sharing their awkward pet portraits, tagging and driving more people to this incredible Friends for Life animal shelter in the virtual space. And last but not least is this smorgasbord of screenshots here. really what this slide is meant to represent is the really exciting opportunities that there are to be had with live video, with video of any kind, but with live video in particular. We know that in 2020, the online video streaming industry grew 99% and is expected to grow 15-fold by 2022. People are not just creating a lot of video, they are consuming it like absolute bonkers crazy. I read a study recently that said 80% of consumers, so thinking more like B2C, e-commerce product specific, 80% of consumers say they prefer watching a live video to reading a blog, which as a writer blows my mind, and 54% saying that they want to see more video content from the brands and nonprofits that they support. Live video can be cheap and easy. Live video can save you money on paid ads because sites like Facebook, their algorithms are very friendly for live video streaming. And here are just a few examples. The top two are very out there and uber experimental. You see a congresswoman who's playing a video game on Twitch, which is a live video game platform. To raise funds and early voter engagement. You see rapper Travis Scott on the right side taking over Fortnite, which is another gaming online environment. And then below, you've got the Metropolitan Museum of Art trying to recreate some of their highly anticipated sneak peek moments with a 360 exhibit opening that was also accompanied by live QA from really cool artists and curators. And then, of course, what I'm most drawn to personally as a community member, this live community support coverage where you can really get some insight into kind of like a day in the life of an organization, understanding the impact that you have, understanding the humans behind the logo, behind the brand, behind the Facebook wall. That again is just a critical part of that supporter journey that's going to hook me in and help me really help make it easy to convert me to an ambassador, to a donor, and an ongoing supporter. So we return finally to this idea of connection. And that could look and feel and act like a lot of different things within your organization, but it all starts within your organization, making sure that you're connected to the tools, the reporting, to the, the planning, the pivoting, and most importantly, the mission, vision, and values that you all share, especially moving in to this new year. We talked about quite a bit. Things I want you to leave with, know that this is the year for deepening that connection, again, within your organization and externally with your community to get more folks through that funnel to be donors and ambassadors. I want to empower you to be that active voice and to find ways you can leverage some of these fundamentals within your own work and stay experimental. Keep that mindset to connect and build awareness. I'm going to leave us on the slide and then I'm going to stop sharing so we can talk face to face. But if you would like these slides, you can email or you can direct message, share creativity, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you'd like to go. And thank you. That was really fun.
Thanks, Katie. I actually don't see any questions in the Q&A box. I've got a couple softballs that we can kind of pitch to you to get the conversation going. But thank you so much for your time today. That was a fantastic presentation. I certainly learned a lot. Just out of curiosity, what have you found to be the most challenging part of COVID for you as a marketer and working at Black Sheep? And what have you seen in the organizations you've been working with?
I think one of the biggest challenges is just the noise that's out there right now. And I don't say noise to be like derisive of, of what other people are posting or sharing or needing or wanting, but it's a wall that we have to, figure out how to go around or climb over because there's more people on social, there's more people actively talking, pushing back, sharing, creating new content than ever on social. But then there's just this swell of need and of incredible community organizations trying to fill that need with smaller budgets, with smaller teams in many instances. So I think that's been the biggest thing to overcome is like, how can we amplify our client voices and our agency voice to, be heard and to be noticed. And what we find is that, okay, like there's always going to be someone that's a little louder, that maybe has a bigger ad budget, always. But if it really comes down to understanding your audience and making sure that you're speaking and acting on your community needs, providing value is really the way to go. So not just shouting out in the void, not just doing things because other people are, you always have, but really honing it down into what do my people need? What does my community need in this moment? And keeping that drumbeat going and going and going has been the most helpful. And also, I'll just say it again, we love live video. Love live video.
Good, got it. I see some questions in the chat. If you guys could direct those to the Q&A box, which is different than the chat box, that helps us keep track of things a little bit better. But let me see if I can go back and pull some of these out. What are some best tips and practices for video content?
Ooh, okay, so I have many when it comes to creating really sexy, professionally produced content, but I didn't even want to talk about that because, again, live video, I'm super excited about it and it will save you money. Feel like Mattress Mac here. To me, it's number one, this is weird, a weird answer. Just do it. Like, the best video is the video that you create and you get online, the thoughtful video that you create and you get online. So to me, this is where that experimentation comes into play, where it's you figuring out, maybe there's some really savvy interns, or maybe, you know, you on the weekends are very comfortable, you know, filming children or sports or whatever it is that makes you happy. But it's just finding ways to do those little micro experiments, those little mini tests to see, first of all, how can you do it consistently and effectively where it's professional, but not feeling like you have to be too professional, and just getting it out there. And from there, you can start playing with lighting, you can start playing with, you know, streaming on multiple services at once. Like, how thrilling to have a Facebook Live stream going, to have that same video going on YouTube, and to have all of that pulling into your homepage or landing page. Like, that's great stuff. But it really just starts with you experimenting fearlessly on a very small, calculated level.
And this is an interesting question that kind of is along those lines. This is from Annabelle, who works at an arts and music organization. She was wondering if there are any new strategies. This is a very specific question. Are there any new strategies to deal with the new privacy laws from Apple that affect marketing on Facebook specifically? We have seen some of our marketing videos be rejected and not sure how to get around it. Yeah, specific.
This is very interesting. And hi, Annabelle, I really love you. You should email me about this. So I know that this is something that's very challenging for us, is like Facebook is definitely tightening restrictions around what ads are being let through. And in order to be able to place those ads, of course, you need to be verified, and that process takes some time. But typically what we've experienced is that it's more like what they call political ads, or health and wellness if it's not political, like social issues ads. So I actually, for art, I'm very surprised that this is an issue. So I feel like that's a very unsatisfying answer, but I'm never going to say I don't know without saying, but I can look into it and find out. So Annabelle, if you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to dig in a little bit deeper. And if anyone else on this call has similar questions, please shoot me an email and I'll share my findings with you. So it's tricky.
Would you throw up your that slide again with your contact information? We've had another request for that.
I will. And hey, let me do this. Why don't I paste it into the chat so it's easier for you guys to copy and paste also.
And Annabelle says that she will reach out.
Excellent. I feel you. It's so frustrating, but getting verified, I mean, there's like multiple steps that you sometimes have to do for that too, but that my hope would be an easy way, if they've not pushed you for verification yet, something that could bring those barriers down. But sometimes there could be like words that trigger them, you know, language, but I just can't imagine what you would be posting that would be deemed offensive. So happy to help you.
Great. We've got about 4 minutes left. I have a lot of questions and I can keep keep going, but I can't imagine. Oh, goody, we have one. My organization has seen our social media follower personas change from donor supporters to people in need. Interesting. What strategies do you suggest we use on social for our current followers?
That is super interesting. So okay, when thinking, so if I think channels, I'm thinking supporter funnels, and then I'm thinking channel strategies. It sounds like what we're learning by listening to, the folks that are joining in the conversation is that it could be that you need to focus more heavily in the spaces that you can directly reach your donors, your supporters. Like it may be that what they're telling you is that you need to be a little bit more hyper-focused on certain kinds of messaging within certain channels, versus just kind of throwing everything everywhere. Like if folks are sort of self-selecting, what they want from you, or what they're wanting to contribute. That's one thing to consider, is that, okay, we're seeing this rise in need, and this is how folks are reaching out. I will say though, I wonder how you wish that people in need would reach out. Because I know, even thinking way back, whenever I worked for an e-commerce company, we actually would have teams that would be supporting with social, we called it social customer service, where, we had an intention for Facebook and Instagram, but inevitably we'd have people coming and seeking help. But one of our strategies was to have folks at the ready, always watching, making sure that we were either diverting or immediately responding to need, within that network, but ultimately getting them to the place off of that channel where we could actually help them. So not that we were hiding folks that needed help or maybe had complaints, not that you're getting complaints, but it was being public about your support, but having a really easy pathway to getting those people to the appropriate place for them to get what they need. So maybe if we think of what that funnel looks like for people in need, maybe everyone ends up on Facebook because that's very natural, or whatever social channel you're seeing this happen the most in. But then you're building out strategies, you have ready to go language and messaging to get folks to where they should be to support them the best. I don't know if that's helpful to you, Anonymous. But
I think that is helpful, and it is so interesting to see what has changed so quickly in the last year. It feels like we've probably experienced a decade of innovation and growth, and just so quickly. So
and gray hair,
and gray hair, yes. Well, it looks like we are really close to the hour. Amy Lampy, do you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you so much, Katie. We really, really appreciate your time and involvement and letting us know these incredible innovative practices. We hope everyone had some wonderful takeaways. We are at the end of our session, so you are welcome to hop off. But if anyone wants to stay, I don't know if there's any more burning questions or that you want to field, we can keep this open for just a little longer. But we appreciate y'all being here. And thank you so much for spending your